Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour, a very special experimental Pat Mayo Hour. As joining me in studio, I have Cody Saftik from the Bookie Beatdown on the Fantasy Sports Network and Fight Network. He is the expert when it comes to MMA, specifically UFC as well. We're talking about Fight Night 60 from Broomfield, Colorado, and as many people know, I don't know a ton about MMA at all. What I know from you coming on my show and talking to me. But what I do know is daily fantasy. So between the two of us, between my acumen with daily fantasy and knowing all the rules and such, and you knowing who these people are, I think together we can create quite the team.
Winning formula,
here.
right?
This
Winning
is what
formula.
It is. So, I mean, usually we talk about betting odds, and we'll get to your best bets at the end. But I do want to focus solely on the daily game in terms of Kountermove and in terms of DraftKings. So it's a little bit different. On DraftKings, you have a $50,000 salary cap, and on Kountermove, it's only $25,000. Now, you pick 5 fighters from each. However, the prices don't exactly line up, so we're going to look for value here among fighters. So the fighters that actually do score the most points are those who win in the first round. You get 100 points on DraftKings if you can finish the guy in the first. So just off the top, is there anyone that you see here, regardless of price, that's going to win in the first round?
Right off the bat, Max Holloway is the guy I like. Max Holloway, young kid from Hawaii, known for finishing fights, known for finishing them in empathetic fashion. And his last fight, actually, against Akira Corsani, same thing. He gets a knockout a minute in. Cole Miller, not to say he's not a skillful individual, but not exactly known for his punch resistance. And if he's going to get knocked out, it'll probably happen within that first round. So some good value, Max Holloway.
It is good value. Now, he's very, very expensive. In fact, he may actually be, he is the second most expensive player on the board, except for Nick Lentz.
That one, very, very disagree with that Nick Lentz to be that price. But we'll work our way
We'll
down.
get to that for a second. So it's Max Holloway versus Cole Miller, age 23 versus age 30.
Yes.
So we've got a bit of a track record on Cole Miller here. He's 21-8. That's not bad.
And he's been in the UFC for a very long time. Very long time. So he's experienced. But he's another one of those guys that is he coming near the end of his career, whereas Max Holloway is blossoming and will be a top 10 guy if he isn't already a top 10 guy.
So you feel like Max Holloway has the best ability to finish early of any of these guys, so it is worth taking that price.
Well, like we talked about, you want a guy that's going to finish hopefully in the first round. Max Holloway, not only a guy known to finish, but if he can get the job done early, as he's done in the past, then that's great points right there to score.
Also, significant strikes are worthy of points. Takedowns are worthy of points. I mean, submission wins count just as much as knockout wins. So do you think that Max Holloway, even if let's say he can't finish in the first round, he finishes in the second, that he can build up a lot of points along the way?
Yeah, I mean, he's a volume striker, so when he hits you, he's going to throw lots of punches. He generally has a long reach compared to other of the guys at featherweight that he fights. In this case, he's actually giving up 5 inches against Cole Miller. But that might play into his hand, because when Cole Miller hits guys, he gets confident, and he thinks to himself, you know what, this is going well. I think I'll just do this from now on. It doesn't work that way. Max Holloway will catch him eventually. One thing I like against Max Holloway is he's got wins by first-round stoppage, but he's also got wins by third-round stoppage. So he's not going to get tired as the fight goes. He's always trying to finish and get you those additional points. So he must know the game.
Listen, finish is huge. So the main event, I guess, is Benson Henderson versus Brandon Thatch. And both are over $5,000 on Kountermove, which means they really have no idea. And it's almost the same thing on DraftKings. I mean, Thatch comes in at $10,100. Henderson is just slightly under that at $9,800. So really, realistically, you can only take one. Especially if we're spending so much money on Max Holloway, we do need to find a few values somewhere on the list. Would you go near any one of these guys? And I guess my second question is this a 5-round fight?
That's a big problem. It is a 5-round fight. Typically, when you have 5 rounds, they become more expensive because everybody knows they have.
You can pile up more points through attrition. You get those additional 2 rounds.
In 10 minutes, that can make a big difference, especially when you're piling up, takedown defense and significant strikes landed. In this case, the 5 rounds, it will play better for Benson Henderson, who's been in 5-round situations, and Thatch has not. However, the value's on Thatch, because if he's going to win this fight, it's possible that he's just going to grind out the 5 rounds, but it's also very possible that he might get the stoppage win. So when you're looking at it that way, we want those additional points for the stoppage. This is a guy that's from Colorado. Colorado, the highest altitude of any of the American states.
So he has that training in him, too, though.
Exactly.
He's used to it.
So 20 minutes in, whereas most people might be going, man, what's happening with my lungs? What's happening with my blood pressure's dropping? I can't handle it.
As a smoker, that's what would happen to me.
Well, most people, apparently if you're from the Denver or the Colorado area, you don't notice until you go elsewhere. But apparently if you visit, you notice it. and you get very tired very quickly.
I forget who it was for the Steelers. They just, every time that the Steelers played in Denver, he couldn't play.
Couldn't do it.
Because he had some weird abnormal like blood flow or something like that the high elevation basically would kill him. He tried it once and ended up in the hospital for weeks. So they were just like, yeah, you might want to sit this one out. We'll try to win this one without you. And then they go and lose to Tebow. But that's beside the point.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. And typically when you see MMA fighters coming out of Colorado, if you leave Colorado, it's not necessarily the same advantage, right? Because now that you're returning to regular altitude, you kind of go back to normal. But when visiting fighters visit Colorado, it's a big advantage.
It's a shock to their system.
And not only does he have a huge advantage in Brendan Thatch because he's from Colorado, but there's another fighter on the card is going to have the same advantage. We'll get to that in a bit, but another guy with some good value on him.
All right, well, let's get to him right now then. Who is it?
Neil Magny, Colorado's own Neil Magny. And this guy's on a giant win streak, first of all, but he has won 5 fights in 2014 alone. He was the most active UFC fighter anyways, but to win that many is huge. He's got 2 things going for him. One, he's got an 80-inch reach, which is gigantic. When he throws punches, he throws them in bunches. He typically outlands opponents 1.8 strikes for every 1 strike that they land. Essentially, he's doubling up their punch output. So that's huge for points right there. And also, the guy he's fighting, not exactly good.
Hey, help me with this name. Actually, no, we're going to have fun with this. With Pat tries to pronounce fighters' names.
I think you might get this one if you really commit yourself.
All right, he has 2 I's in a row. That's not at the end. His name, Jesus. All right, so Kichi Kunimoto.
Pretty good.
What is it?
Kichi Kunimoto.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailing it.
Exactly.
So don't take Kichi Kunimoto?
Yeah, I mean, if you're betting it in terms of its odds, he's a heavy underdog. But in terms of DraftKings, same thing.
It's reflected in the price.
He doesn't have many ways to win the fight, and that's what you want.
Magny is actually more expensive than Holloway. So it's Magny, Lentz, and then actually Magny is the most expensive at $11,800. However, on Kountermove, he's actually cheaper than Thatch.
Yeah, it's strange. I think what it is that when you look at Brendan Thatch, and if you ask the casual person, do you think Thatch is going to beat Benson Henderson? Maybe. Do you think he's going to finish Benson Henderson? I don't think so. In Neil Magny's case, it's almost a foregone conclusion that he should just brush past Kichi Kunimoto, who's 3-0 in the UFC in his own right, so it's not like he has a history.
He's not a scrub?
He's not a scrub by no means. It's just the way this one's playing out and the way the odds makers certainly figuring it, this should be a route for Neil Magny. And that's the case. You want to bet the route.
All right, so would you feel more confident? Let's say they were equal prices. Would you rather go with Max Holloway or would you rather go with Neil Magny?
Max Holloway. Max Holloway, like I said, can finish in the first round, and I expect him to actually finish quickly in this one. Neil Magny, he accumulates punches over time. And when you see him beat guys, his last fight, he got the TKO in the 3rd round. Prior to that, his last stoppage victory was a stoppage in the 2nd round. And 4 other fights all went the distance. So Neil Magny's a guy that can finish you, mostly because you're just tired of getting punched after 15 minutes, right? In this case, Max Holloway is the guy that can just end it a minute in.
Okay.
And that's why he's the better value.
So let's say Magny was cheaper. Or, I mean, on Kountermove, like, he's $5,300. So he's cheaper on Kountermove per amount that you get to spend towards your salary cap than he is on DraftKings. So would you consider even, I don't know how much depth is in this card where you can find, are there underdogs on this card that you could fill out your roster with if you went with 2 very expensive guys at the top?
Most definitely there's guys that you can find. And also what you have to realize is that other people playing DraftKings and Kountermove, they're thinking the same thing. They're thinking, well, the more expensive guys have to be the better guys. And like I talked about earlier,
you can only fit so many into your roster, right?
But Neil Magny is one of those guys, as I mentioned, it's a foregone conclusion. He should just route Kunimoto. So most people are going to go Neil Magny. Therefore, I would try to go Max Holloway and get some of that value on the undercard guys. Because there are going to be guys that are going to finish, that are going to get the win. And if you can get them for cheap, that's how you win these.
All right, so you had a bit of a, as soon as I brought up Nick Lentz as a huge favorite here, he's a far more expensive player on DraftKings than he is on Kountermove. Only $4,900 on Kountermove. But, oh, Jesus. Levon Makashvili. Really?
Yeah.
It's like I studied these before.
I don't know. You're getting good.
I'm starting to recognize these Eastern European names now. Georgian. Well, there we go. About as Eastern Europe as you can probably get. That's right on the fringes right there. Who knows? Georgia might be invaded by Russia by the time this actually airs, so who knows?
He might be Russian by the time fight night happens.
I always veer towards Russians. They're tough guys.
Very tough. And that's why I don't think Nick Lentz is putting this one away. I mean, You're looking at the value here that Nick Lentz is going to beat him. And the reason why this one's getting out of hand is because Makashvili's taking the fight on very, very short notice.
How short?
About a week and a half, right? So
what?
Yes, and that's not to say he's just sitting around at home not really doing anything. By the time they say, Levin, we need you to fight, okay, no problem. He's good to go.
No problem.
At this point in MMA, people aren't just sitting around. You're kind of always
training all the time.
So he's very inexperienced, only having a 6-1 record, as opposed to Nick Lentz, who has basically as many losses and draws as Levon has in his entire fighting
Now, this is just in UFC.
this is just Nick Lentz has 25 wins. Levin has 7 fights altogether.
He says he's 9-1 here. That's what I have.
You know what? And it's been varying as well. But he's one of those guys that he's out of the New Jersey regional scene.
Okay.
They don't know. The thing is, we know what we're going to get out of him. Good grappler, durable guy, not typically a finisher, and he's fought a good guy by the name of Popo Bezerra. That's kind of where the watermark for him is. In this fight, he's fighting, the best fighter he's ever fought, but there's a big question mark on him. And I don't know why people would assume Nick Lentz is just going to rout him. I don't think Nick Lentz is going to knock him out. I don't think Nick Lentz is going to submit him. So if Nick Lentz wins, it's going to be a boring decision. If you paid all of this money, if you paid your $11,000 on Nick Lentz, and you got a boring decision and 30 to 40 points out of it, you'd be very upset.
You would be. So maybe Levin is not the guy that you want to go with in terms of a scrub, but you're saying avoid Lentz.
Yeah, I just don't see the value in him. And in terms of if you want to bet him straight up, it's not great value, but that all asides the point here. You want a guy that's going to finish. And Nick Lentz is a grinding wrestler. That's not to say he can't submit him, but I don't think it's going to happen. And therefore, I think the people who are setting these lines, they're setting it as, oh, he's fighting a short notice replacement. He should just take this guy out in 40 seconds. I don't see it that way. And because I don't see it that way, I'm staying away from him.
So would you think there is value in this going 3 rounds, that maybe you can throw Levin at the bottom of your lineup as an $8,200 guy on DraftKings and say, you know what, I'm happy with 35 to 45 points from this guy that has absolutely no value that probably many people aren't going to have? Or do you see someone else that's, maybe not a huge underdog, but a slight underdog that can actually win?
I see better underdogs for certain.
All right, well then hit me up with the best one.
I like Pat Walsh, the beast from the East.
I like the name Patrick. I'm not going to lie to you about that.
It's a winner name, right? That's what I'm told.
It's pretty close. Although he's not an underdog according to this, is the thing. DraftKings has him listed as $10,600. Kountermove, he's cheaper. He's only $4,700. So you can get below that $5,000 middling threshold on Kountermove. It seems like he's overvalued on DraftKings if that's the case.
Definitely the case. What I like about Pat Walsh here, and it's kind of surprising that they have him that much, is this guy has no cardio. Zero cardio.
They have him, it
is zero.
Dan Kelly and Walsh are even on Kountermove at $4,700. But on DraftKings, there's over a $10,000 or a $1,000 disparity between their prices.
And you know what? If betting the same way, when the line first opened, it was near even, and now it's fluctuating towards Pat Walsh. So maybe more people are jumping on board.
So what you're saying is that Patrick Walsh, if he's the guy that you want to take in this fight, he's a much better Kountermove play than he is a DraftKings play.
Certainly. When you compare both values, $4,700, that's a good price for Kountermove. You like getting guys for that price.
Yeah, and anyone under $5,000 that you think could win, get them on your card.
This fight is a bit of a coin flip. I'm going with Pat Walsh, and I'm going with him to finish. However, if you were going to get that much better value on Kountermove, Dan Kelly would be a good pick.
Well, because if he's going to win, he's only $9,300 on DraftKings.
And that's why it's cheap. For Kountermove, I prefer to go with Pat Walsh, and being that they're the same price. But if you're going to get $1,000 cheaper, well, now you got to kind of fit in some value here.
All right.
This fight screams not going the distance.
Either way.
No, there's no chance. I don't see it going the distance.
Do you think it's a quick finish, or do you think this is a third round finish?
I'm thinking personally in the first round, but at the latest, the second round. The third round, one of both guys would have a heart attack and would die. So you would assume they would just call it off. But
do you get a TKO for that?
Yeah, you do. You would totally get the win and be like, hey, you know what? Your opponent died. You must have done something. Colorado is death to guys that don't have great cardio. And these guys don't have great cardio.
Is there anyone else that you can see from this card that maybe doesn't have great cardio that is a favorite?
Well, that's exactly it. Kevin Lee, he is the favorite, but he's fighting Michael Prazeres, the Brazilian-born Prazeres. And Prazeres not exactly known for his cardio. When he fades late. Kevin Lee's a very young kid at 22 years old. He always keeps on coming. So he's a guy that's going to be able to benefit from that. Ray Borg, I am all in on this kid. Yeah, the return.
He did play in Colorado. He'll be used to
for
the
one
elevation.
Season. Exactly.
So he's the Borg.
The Taz Mexican Devil.
That's not bad.
Good name.
It seems like
you gotta stand out amongst your peers.
Listen, it seems like it's trying a bit hard, but I appreciate the effort. So Kevin Lee is $10,800 on DraftKings. He's $5,000 on Kountermove. He seems like...
Because he shouldn't finish. The idea is he shouldn't probably get the finish over Prazeres. It's that he'll be able to just...
He'll grind out 3 rounds.
He'll be able to grind them down. And I know you get points for takedowns and you get points for...
But if you can find the guy that finishes, that's worth so many more points.
And so when you look at the card, in right away, guys that scream with a finish. Max Holloway, guy that can definitely get a finish. Neil Magny, definitely a guy that can get a finish. I like Pat Walsh to get a finish. Ray Borg to get a finish.
So you do like Ray Borg to get a finish. Now, he is
absolutely $12,000. But he's very expensive. I would imagine he's expensive.
He's not expensive on Kountermove, though.
Very surprising.
On DraftKings has this figured out. He's $12,000. And again, this is like the 5th time I've said it, but he's actually the most expensive guy. He's the only one that cracks the $12,000 barrier, but on Kountermove, he's only $5,100.
I'll tell you what, for $5,100, it's definitely something to think about. But I'm telling you right now, for $12,000.
I'm putting him on our Kountermove team.
But do not put him on your DraftKings.
No, I'm keeping him on.
$12,000, that's a tough price. Chris Kalaitis, his opponent, has never been finished. So it's hard to bet on, he'll finish this guy. And the guy's never been finished before. So that one's definitely iffy. As well, I like Efrain Escudero, who you should get for a good price because he's
$4,800 on Kountermove. He is $10,000 on DraftKings.
Yeah, so a little bit.
So he's right at the even threshold on both sides, basically.
Yeah, it's very even threshold. He's a guy that's been around the UFC for a long time, but he gets kicked out. He gets brought back in. He gets kicked out. He's got terrible work ethic. He doesn't.
What is it? Why does he get kicked out?
Up. He just loses fights.
He's lazy and loses fights.
Yeah, the mark on him is that he's just a very lazy guy.
Then how does he beat Rodrigo de Lima?
Rodrigo de Lima is Brazilian, so I think he's going to fade by the second round. Let me tell you, you have to have great cardio to go over there and compete in this. I mean, it breaks you down. And Efrain Escudero, not the greatest fighter, but with over 30 fights to his name, he can go the distance. With lots of fights of his going 15 minutes, I know he can do it. And when he gets tired, he's a veteran of the sport. He knows how to get past that.
So he'll lie on the guy on the ground.
De Lima had fought our buddy here, Neil Magny. And in the first round, De Lima, like a house on fire, he beats him up. This is great. Second round, what the hell happened to De Lima, man? And he gets knocked out. So I think he'll fade here. And it is a close fight. It's basically near money if you want to actually bet it straight up. But it's near money because it's a close fight. I just don't think it goes to 15 minutes. I don't. I think Efrain Escudero, he'll get the finish.
How about Tim Elliott?
Tim Elliott. Well, this one's
a cheapie.
Yeah,
I need to find a scrub to throw on my card somewhere here.
He's good in terms that he'll pile up points, but to get a finish, I don't think it happening.
So
Zabkovsky, ultra durable.
But do you think it could go all 3 rounds?
Yeah, I think he goes all 3 rounds, and he's got a very high output style where he can land lots of kicks, he can land lots of punches, he'll stuff takedowns, which is another way to score points. And if you get him cheap, he's good.
Do you think he could win the fight?
He could. He's actually closer to near even when you're betting it. But also, I had talk with a fellow coworker of mine, and that he was one of the guys that we saw some added value on because people kind of, being that he's lost a couple fights, people kind of don't give him the benefit of the doubt. This is a very tough guy in Tim Elliott, very scrappy.
So he's selling for $9,300 on DraftKings and $4,700 on Kountermove. So I think I might fade him on Kountermove as we've already found Borg at $5,100. That just seems like a better bet for the extra $400. But on DraftKings at $9,300, that's one of the cheaper guys on the board. I mean, I don't want to go super scrub with some guy who's going to get annihilated and just get finished in the first round.
No, and this is great because I think when you talk to most people, their idea of Tim Elliott is they don't really remember who he is. They know he's highly ranked, but it's I think that's the guy that Joseph Benavidez beat. I think that's the guy that lost to Ali Bogatin. They don't really remember, but he's very, very, very skilled fighter. And when you compare him to Zach Makovsky, he matches up well against him. If Makovsky's going to win, he needs to get you taken down. He needs to take you down and pound on you. That's his route to victory. Against Tim Elliott, very scrappy and a good wrestler in his outright. So he keeps his fight standing. He could win. And as I mentioned, pile up the points through just sheer output.
Yeah, for scrub values, that's probably what I'm going to end up looking for. So he's going on the DraftKings team. I guess the last fight that we haven't talked about, Chaz Skelly versus someone whose name's cut off and I can't see. Jim something.
Jim Ehlers.
Jim
the Beast.
Can Jim Ehlers win? Because he's only $9,100.
Jim Ehlers could win, and I used to be a big, big fan of his, but he disappointed me in his UFC debut. He won in his UFC debut, but he looked horrendously bad. And Chaz Skelly's been looking good every fight out. So I have Chaz Skelly winning this fight, but for some additional value, can Jim Ehlers win this fight? Yes, he can win this fight. Can he finish this fight? I don't think so. I think if he's going to win, he's going to have to grind out the 15 minutes.
So out of all these underdogs, which one has the best chance of finishing?
I think Efrain Escudero. I really do.
Really?
I think he's got a good submission game. And even in his last fight, which he lost by decision, he shows glimpses of brilliance. He shows the ability to drop you. But in his last fight, he didn't have the cardio to physically pull it off. And I know this is bad because he's going to Colorado now. But his last fight was short notice. This fight, he gets a full camp to train for it. He knows he's going to Colorado, and he knows his job's on the line, and that's a big deal. You don't want to be...
You're fighting for your livelihood here.
Imagine trying to tell somebody, oh, I'm a cage fighter, and they're like, oh, do you fight for the UFC? And you're
No,
I fight for, Cage Wars, or I fight for anything. It's just... It's not a good feel, Even if you tell them I fight for Bellator, or World Series of Fighting, or KSW, or any of these, it still doesn't matter.
It's not the UFC.
It doesn't matter. And I think that bears at the back of his mind. He knows he needs to get the win here, and he'll go for it. His opponent wants to win too, I'm sure. I'm sure he does. But I think Efrain is a little too savvy for him, and he'll get the win.
I like his value better on Kountermove. On DraftKings, he's $10,000. His opponent's $9,900. So they're calling this about
Very
even.
same.
So, but you have a very good feeling that he finishes off to Lima.
Yeah, like I said, it would be better to get better value on him, being that he's an undercard guy and he's near even. But the fact is that when you're looking at the bottom of the card and you're thinking, who might be able to get that finish? And that's the biggest thing here. Whenever you watch whoever wins the DraftKings pool, whoever wins the Kountermove pool, it's those guys that got those finishes. So if you just got to look through the card and say, what are my best cases for getting finishes? Well, I like this one.
Well, here's the predicament that I'm in right now. I've been writing down our DraftKings team, a Kountermove team here. So I have Max Holloway, Neil Magny, Tim Elliott, and Escudero.
Efrain
Escudero, sorry about that. So I need a fifth guy, and he can't be very good because we've now spent a lot of money, or we have to take off Magny, which apparently I don't want to.
Well, how much money do we still have yet to play with?
I'm going to have to do some quick math in my head here. But either way, Holloway's so we're up $1,600, and then we're up $1,800, so we're up over $3,000. We save with Tim Elliott because he is only 93, but then we only save 700, and Escudero's right at the number, so we need someone who's like $8,300.
Okay, so yeah, Dan Kelly's out of the question. Our scrub fighting Pat Walsh.
He is, but we can take Magny off the card and put him on, and then get a better value guy.
I think that's the move, just because when I think about it in my head, I don't necessarily see Magny finishing this fight. I know he's got all the tools to do it. I know he's got the reach. I know he's got the power. I know he's got that, he's the hometown guy. I get that. So if you want to get some better value, you got to go against him.
But listen, if we put Kelly on the card now we have free reign to take anyone basically up to $10,600,
which is good money.
It is pretty good money, but a lot of this fight seems imbalanced. Like there must be a lot of heavy favorites on this card in terms of the betting world.
Yeah, there's about 4 guys that jump out right away that you're thinking, okay, you're going to get these guys at -400, -500, which is obviously pretty
not
big.
Long odds.
Exactly, and then the other fights are more near even. You don't get typically a whole lot of -200 range. It's either close to near even or it's a blowout, and that's what makes it hard for you betting wise, is that the favorites, everybody's on the favorite, and the other guys, they're near even, so you really need to gamble and go with something. This is a situation.
We can now afford to put Patrick Walsh back on, but we went with Kelly, didn't we?
Well, we can go Walsh and somebody else. You can go Walsh and Chaz Skelly. You can go Walsh.
Yeah, but we needed Kelly for his savings, for his discount price.
Yeah.
That's the problem now. So now we're looking in the range of we can put Thatch back on the card, although we probably don't want to if you say he's not going to finish. And I bet you most people end up taking the people in the main event because your casual fan will tune in and say, I just want someone in the main event. It's like everyone had Anderson Silva last time. And well, it did turn out to be a pretty lucrative investment. It wasn't worth the price. You could have faded him and still won.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the thing. I mean, like I said, people like that favorite. People like the big name guy. And people like the fact that they're going to be in 5-round fights. But if you look at the Anderson-Nick Diaz fight as a perfect example, both those guys had, they were projected to score lots of points. And just not the way it goes sometimes in a 5-rounder. I will admit, Thatch probably will score a decent amount of points. It's his hometown, and if you've ever seen the guy fight, he really goes for it.
I kind of want to take this Russian guy.
He really goes for it. And that's what I was also going to say. If you've got 10,600 left, you still got a lot of money. Maybe he's not the greatest pick to make, but
he isn't. But if we put him on his card, we can get Magny back on our card.
Then let's do it. Then that's the move.
All right, so that's the move.
Right
so we're going to go with Holloway. We're going to go with Magny, Elliott, Escudero.
All right.
And then we're going to go with Levon Mashkevili.
Exactly.
The Georgian. The Georgian terror.
He's had some tough times. He's looking to make some money.
All right, so if he can come through for us, we're looking pretty good on DraftKings, and we're probably going to pair him up the same way on Kountermove. So the tentative Kountermove team features Holloway, Walsh, Borg, Escudero, and my man Levon, not Hernandez.
Levon. Getting it done.
All right, so that's going to be all right up. The article will have all of the values posted. So, Cody Saftik, thank you so much for being here. This is fun.
Yeah.
We'll see how this goes. We'll continue to track it. And each week, I'll get some guys on as well who've been playing this full time. One of the guys ended up winning the first ever DraftKings $25,000 event. He's going to tell us how he did that and with the strategy that he looked for. But I think it's fun to work it through ourselves the first time, and then we can compare it to see what we're missing and where we can improve at here.
I was going to say, and eventually maybe we'll have a little friendly competition with him and see how we square off.
Absolutely. So we can follow you at CJ Saftik on Twitter. And when can we watch the Bookie Beatdown?
Bookie Beatdown, big news coming our way. Definitely going to premiere on Fight Network. So if you have Fight Network or you are...
order it.
You should definitely order it. But 5:30 on Thursday, and then it'll have scheduled airings leading up to the events and basically for every event. So we're always around, and if you can't find us on TV, you can definitely find us on the web or shoot us a tweet at Bookie_Beatdown. As I mentioned all the time, we love interacting with the fans, so feel free to drop us a line.
Any one hot bet this week?
You know what? And I'm a parlay, guys, but Max Holloway, that's the one, because not only he's not great value if you bet him straight up. He'd be about -400, -450. But if you bet him to get that finish, I think he's going to pull off the finish. And if you want even more value, tune to Bookie Beatdown, because I'll send you some sweet parlays parlays.
There it is. Sweet parlays from Cody Saftik. I, of course, am Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching the Pat Mayo Hour. You can follow me at the PME. And remember, you can subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on iTunes for the video version and YouTube under the Fantasy Sports Network Pat Mayo Hour tab for the video version. I am Pat Mayo, and I'll see you next time.